Today, we're diving deep into the case of John Wayne Gacy. You see, on the surface, this was a guy who was a pillar of his community, but that surface was hiding one of the darkest, most terrifying secrets in American history. We're going to try to understand how he got away with it for so long. So, just take a look at this. Contractor, community leader, clown. I mean, to his neighbors in suburban Chicago, this was John Wayne Gacy. He ran a super successful business, he was really active in local politics, and he even performed as Pogo the Clown at kids' parties. By all accounts, he was a man people thought they knew, and a man they definitely trusted. But that public image was just a mask. It was a cover for a horrifying reality. 33. That's the number. That's how many boys and young men he murdered, turning his quiet suburban home into his own personal graveyard. So you have to ask, right? How does a man like that become a monster? Well, to figure that out, we really need to follow the timeline. We'll start by looking closer at that public facade. Then we're going to peel back the layers to a hidden pattern of violence. We'll see how one final victim brought it all crashing down, leading to the horrifying discovery in his home and eventually a dramatic trial, and a legacy that, still affects us today. Okay, let's kick things off with the mask Gacy showed the world. And believe me, I'm not just talking about the clown makeup. This was a whole life, carefully constructed, designed to make him seem completely and utterly harmless. And this right here really shows you the two sides of his public life. You've got the respected businessman, active in community groups like the JCs, and at the exact same time, there he is as Pogo the Clown, this happy-go-lucky character he created to entertain children. It's that unbelievable combination that made him so disarming and allowed him to fool pretty much everyone. I mean, it is just wild how deep his integration into society was. His contracting business, a huge success. He was a precinct captain in local politics. Even his clowning was organized through a club. And then you have this. This is the peak of his public legitimacy. A photo with the First Lady, Rosalind Carter, in 1978. It just goes to show how incredibly close he got to the mainstream, all while hiding these unthinkable secrets. Okay, so that's the public face. That's the man everyone knew. Now, let's get to the second part of this story, because underneath that carefully built facade, a pattern of escalating violence had been growing for years. This timeline shows such a clear and frankly disturbing progression. It starts with an abusive childhood, which sadly is common in these kinds of cases. Then, in 1968, boom, he's convicted of a serious sex crime in Iowa. But here's the part that's just hard to wrap your head around. He's sentenced to 10 years, but he gets paroled after just 18 months. 18 months! A year after that, he's in Chicago, completely free to begin his killing spree. Now this is fascinating. This is a quote from his psychiatric evaluation back in 1968. Doctors noted his total denial of responsibility. He saw himself as the victim, blaming everyone else for his problems. This was a massive, flashing red flag, a chilling insight into the mind of a man who would go on to rationalize unimaginable acts. For years, Gacy got away with everything, but in late 1978, one final victim would set off a chain of events that brought his entire world crashing down around him. And that victim was a 15-year-old kid named Robert Peist. He disappeared from the pharmacy where he worked after talking to a local contractor about a possible summer job. That contractor, as police would very quickly discover, was John Wayne Gacy. Unlike in previous cases, this investigation moved fast. Gacy was immediately identified as the last person to see Robert Peist, so the police put him under 24/7 surveillance. Just 2 days later, they had a warrant to search his house. Now, they didn't find Robert, but they found something else. They found items like a class ring and driver's licenses belonging to other missing boys. All of a sudden, this wasn't just about one disappearance anymore. The net was tightening. The evidence was piling up, but absolutely no one could have prepared for what the police were about to uncover at Gacy's home on Somerdale Avenue. And then everything changed on December 21st. After days of constant surveillance, Gacy finally cracked. He broke down and confessed to his lawyers. He admitted that Robert Peist was dead. But then came the real bombshell, the line you see right here. "I've killed 30 people, give or take a few." The search was no longer for one missing boy. It was for a graveyard. This police diagram, it shows the horrifying reality of what was under his house. You can just see the layout here. So, with a new warrant and Gacy's confession, investigators zeroed in on this crawlspace. And what they found was a mass grave. They discovered bodies buried in trenches, some layered right on top of each other, right beneath the floors where he lived his everyday life. It's just unbelievable. The numbers here are just staggering. Of the 33 victims they ultimately found, 26 of them were found packed into that tiny crawl space. 3 more were buried somewhere else on his property, and 4, including Robert Pius, had been thrown into the Des Plaines River. Okay, so the bodies are discovered, they have a confession, the case moves to the courtroom. But believe me, the story of John Wayne Gacy was far from over. So the trial basically became this epic battle between 2 totally different stories. On one side, you have the defense. They're arguing Gacy was legally insane, that he was controlled by these multiple personalities and just couldn't stop himself. But on the other side, the prosecution argued, no way, he was sane, he was in control, and he meticulously planned every single murder and every step he took to hide the bodies. Well, in the end, the jury sided with the prosecution. It took them less than 2 hours to find him guilty on all counts. Gacy was sentenced to death. He then spent the next 14 years on death row, filing appeal after appeal after appeal, but they all failed. He was finally executed in May of 1994. And this right here, this tells you everything you need to know. His final words weren't of remorse or apology. They were a final act of defiance, showing a complete and total lack of feeling for his victims or their families right up until the very end. So after all this time, why does this case still matter so much? Well, first, there's the human cost. 5 of his victims remain unidentified to this day. That means 5 families still have no closure. But it also forced a major change. This case exposed a huge flaw in how police treated missing teenagers, who were often just dismissed as runaways. The public outcry after Gacy led to new laws like the Missing Child Recovery Act, which helped lay the groundwork for the Amber Alert system we all rely on today.
Which really leaves us with this final thought. After the bodies were found, after the killer was caught, what truly remains? Well, what's left are the unidentified victims, the lessons learned by law enforcement, and the painful reminder that sometimes the most monstrous evil can hide behind the most ordinary, even friendly face.